You want to know what it's really like inside Warwick? Let me show you.
Imagine dedicating your entire childhood to a single, beautiful promise. Not a dream of college, not a vision of a career, not the slow, ordinary accumulation of a life built on your own terms. From the moment you were old enough to sit still in a wooden chair, you were taught that none of that matters. The world around you is dying. The governments are rotting. The schools, the careers, the retirement plans. All of it is a distraction, a trap set by invisible forces who want to keep you from the only thing that truly matters, serving Jehovah. And at the very summit of that service, gleaming like a city on a hill, sits one destination above all others: Bethel. For a Jehovah's Witness, an invitation to serve at the world headquarters, now housed inside the breathtaking, architect-designed compound in the hills of Warwick, New York, is not simply a job offer. It is the validation of a life. It is God Himself looking down at you, singling you out from 8 million other believers and saying, You are the one I want closest to me. So when that acceptance letter finally arrives, and entire families weep with joy when it does, the young believer who packs their bags and drives toward Warwick believes, with every cell in their body, that they are walking into the presence of God. This documentary is about what happens next. This is the story of the PIMO Bethelite, the volunteer who is physically in but mentally out, the person who went looking for paradise and found a corporation, the believer who pulled back the curtain, saw the machinery behind it, and was then trapped. Too afraid to leave, too awake to stay silent. This is what it actually feels like to wake up inside the trap. If this is the kind of investigative content you have been looking for, hit that like button right now and subscribe, because this is only episode 1, and what comes in the episodes ahead will shake everything you think you know about this organization. Subscribe now. Let's get into it. Part 1. The Illusion and the Vow. To understand the trap, you first have to understand the bait. The psychological journey to Warwick does not begin with an application form. It begins in infancy. It begins in the back seats of cars on the way to Thursday night meetings, in the Kingdom Hall pews on Sunday mornings, in the careful conversations parents have with children about why they are different from everyone else at school. By the time a young Jehovah's Witness is a teenager, the architecture of their entire reality has been constructed around a single organizing principle. The world outside is Babylon the Great, a corrupt and collapsing system under the control of Satan, and the organization, always referred to simply as the truth, is the only lifeboat. Within that worldview, Bethel is not just prestigious, it is sacred. Congregation elders speak of Bethelites the way other communities speak of their most decorated veterans. When a former Bethelite visits a local kingdom hall, they are received with a reverence that borders on awe. They have been in the presence of the governing body. They have walked the halls where God's channel on earth makes its decisions. The application process itself deepens this reverence. Candidates must be exemplary in every measurable way: regular in field service, faithful in meeting attendance, spiritually unblemished in the eyes of the elders who write their recommendations. The process takes months. The waiting is excruciating. And when the letter finally arrives, it lands not just as an acceptance, but as a divine verdict. You are worthy. You have been chosen. The congregation's response is immediate and overwhelming. There are tears, embraces, prayers of gratitude. The entire community treats the moment as a spiritual commissioning, a sending forth of one of their own into the holiest work on earth. No one mentions the contract, because buried beneath the spiritual ceremony, beneath the tears and the carefully edited JW broadcasting montages, there is a legal document. Every Bethel volunteer signs what the organization calls a vow of poverty. In plain language, you agree to work full-time, frequently exceeding 50 hours a week when mandatory meetings and field service are added to the workday. In exchange for a room, meals, and a monthly stipend that in recent years has hovered around the cost of a modest cell phone bill, you surrender any claim to wages. You surrender any accumulation of savings. You surrender any retirement provision for the years of your life you are giving away. The young believer signs it without hesitation. Why would they hesitate? They are not signing a labor contract. They are signing a covenant with the Almighty. And so they arrive. Suitcase in hand, heart full, faith burning. They drive through the gates of Warwick and feel, for one extraordinary moment, that they have arrived at the center of the universe. The feeling lasts, on average, a few months. Part 2. The Corporate Coldness. The first crack in the matrix is rarely dramatic. It does not arrive as a single thunderclap of revelation. It comes slowly, The way cold water fills a room, so gradually that you don't notice how deep you are until the chill is already in your bones. For most Bethel volunteers, the disillusionment begins with the work itself. Warwick functions like a factory, a very clean, very well managed, very tightly controlled factory. Volunteers are assigned to departments based on the organization's needs, not on any spiritual gifts or personal interests. One person ends up in laundry, another in plumbing, another cleaning bathrooms. The vast theological education they imagined does not materialize. The deep searching conversations with wise, anointed elders they pictured in their most hopeful daydreams simply do not happen. The micromanagement is relentless. Every aspect of daily life is governed by a thick internal document known as the Bethel Standards. Dress code, grooming standards, room cleanliness, punctuality, the procedure for requesting personal days, the terms under which a volunteer can be reassigned or dismissed. And it is that last category that introduces the first shadow of fear into what was supposed to be paradise. If a volunteer becomes seriously ill and cannot work, the organization is not required to care for them indefinitely. If they age out of physical usefulness, they may be reassigned to a congregation. They leave with no savings, no secular work history, no marketable skills in most cases, and no retirement plan. The organization does not provide pensions to dismissed or reassigned volunteers. The vow of poverty cuts only one direction. Former Bethelites described this realization as the moment the spiritual coloring began to drain from their world. This is not a family that will catch you if you fall. This is an employer that will replace you with the next idealistic 20-year-old who reads that acceptance letter and weeps with gratitude. The warmth was never unconditional. It was always productivity conditional. And once you see that, you cannot unsee it. Part 3. The Mask. As the exhaustion mounts, something more insidious begins to happen. The psychological architecture of Bethel starts reshaping the volunteer's inner life in ways that are deeply and lastingly harmful. There is an unspoken but ironclad rule at Warwick. You must always be happy. You are working 50 or more hours a week for a stipend that wouldn't cover a month's rent anywhere in the developed world. You are living inside a controlled environment where every major life decision requires institutional approval. And yet, you cannot say you are struggling, because if you are sad, that is not a mental health issue, that is a spiritual deficiency. And the prescribed solution is always the same. Pray more, study more, serve more. Volunteers who develop depression or burnout are not referred to independent therapists in any meaningful sense. They are managed internally. They are called into meetings with Bethel elders who ask probing questions about their spiritual loyalty. The consultation is less clinical assessment, more institutional interrogation. And the volunteer, who has been conditioned since childhood to interpret their emotional pain as evidence of insufficient faith, leaves those meetings feeling not better, but worse. Former Bethelites who have since left speak of a reliance on antidepressants far more common than the leadership would ever acknowledge publicly. They speak of colleagues who quietly fell apart and were quietly reassigned before anyone could ask too many questions. They all use the same word for what they learned to do to survive it. The mask. You put it on when you walk out of your room. You wear it through morning worship, through your work assignment, through the communal dining hall, through the mandatory evening meetings. You take it off only behind the locked door of your own room. And you are so tired from wearing it that the relief of removing it feels almost physical. The fractures accumulate in silence, in private, invisible to the institution that is causing them. Part 4. The Men Behind the Curtain. For many PIMO Bethelites, everything before this point could still have been rationalized. The hard work, spiritual discipline, the micromanagement, order in God's household, the emotional suppression, a test of faith. But there is one category of experience that is much harder to explain away. And it happens when you see the governing body not as elevated figures projected onto a screen, but as ordinary men walking the same hallways you clean. The governing body presents itself to the global membership as something approaching the divine. These are the men described in organizational publications as the faithful and discreet slave of Matthew 24:45, God's singular channel of communication with humanity in the modern age. Their interpretations of Scripture are not mere opinions. They are described as the spiritual food that Jehovah provides for his people. To question them is, in the organization's language, apostasy. But at Warwick, the veil is thin. Volunteers who work in proximity to the leadership observe things that do not survive contact with the official narrative. They observe the human flaws, the short tempers, the petty territorial disputes, the obvious political maneuvering between factions. They observe the material reality of the leadership's daily life, which stands in striking and uncomfortable contrast to the vow of poverty signed by every other volunteer on the campus. The suits are tailored and expensive. The watches are not from discount retailers. The dining arrangements include private rooms with menus that do not resemble what is served to the general Bethel population. The travel involves comfort that the rank-and-file volunteer can scarcely imagine, funded by the donations of millions of ordinary witnesses who give what little they have with absolute sincerity. And the Bethelite watches all of this from the corridor, or from across the dining room, or from behind the laundry cart they are pushing down the hall. The theological devastation of this observation cannot be overstated. The young volunteer did not come to Warwick to be near executives. They came to be near God, and the gap between those two things, the God they were promised and the executives they found, is not a small gap. It is an abyss. Former Bethelites describe this moment as one of the most disorienting experiences of their lives, because it is not just the leadership they are losing faith in, it is the entire framework within which their life has had meaning. Every sacrifice, every missed holiday, every secular education declined, every relationship quietly allowed to wither, all of it was predicated on the certainty that this was the one true organization chosen by God. If these men are just men, and the evidence inside the walls of Warwick makes that increasingly difficult to deny, then what was all of it for? Part 5. The trap snaps. Shut. Why don't they simply leave? The answer is one of the most psychologically sophisticated and morally troubling aspects of the entire Jehovah's Witness system. The organization has not merely built a belief system, it has built a total social ecosystem, designed, whether intentionally or through the accumulated logic of institutional self-preservation, to make departure functionally catastrophic. The doctrine of disfellowshipping and shunning is the mechanism. Every Jehovah's Witness understands it from childhood. If a member formally leaves the faith, disfellowshipped or publicly disassociated, every relationship they have ever had within the organization is severed immediately. Parents are instructed not to call. Siblings are instructed not to visit. Lifelong friends are instructed not to acknowledge the person's existence in public. The social death is not metaphorical. It is operationally, literally, completely real. Now place that reality inside the specific situation of a Bethel volunteer. Every person they love exists inside the organization. They have no friends outside it, because the organization spent their entire life subtly discouraging those connections. They have no career outside it. They have no savings, no secular qualifications in many cases, no safety net of any kind. And they are standing in Warwick, in a suit, pushing a laundry cart, knowing that the thing they are working for is not what it claims to be. If they say so out loud, formally, officially, they will be thrown out of the compound. They will arrive in the outside world with nothing, and every single person they love will be ordered to treat them as if they are already dead. So they stay. They put on the mask in the morning and go to work and sit through morning worship and answer, "Wonderful, how are you?" and fold the laundry and fix the pipes and clean the floors. They do all of it for a God they are no longer sure is there, to maintain relationships they know are entirely conditional on their continued performance of belief. This is what PIMO means. This is what it actually costs. But here is what the organization did not fully account for when it built this trap. Some of these volunteers, trapped, awake, invisible, start to look around. They are, after all, inside the machine. They have access to the corridors the public never walks. They see the documents the membership never reads. They hear the conversations in rooms that JW Broadcasting will never film. And some of them start taking notes. Conclusion. What comes next? In every institution that has chosen concealment over accountability, there is a moment when the insiders stop protecting the secret, when the weight of what they know becomes heavier than the cost of saying it. That moment is arriving for the Watchtower Society. The leaks are coming from inside the house. The documents are finding their way out. The PIMO volunteers who spent years wearing the mask are slowly, carefully, at great personal cost, beginning to speak. In episode 2 of the Warwick Files, we go directly into the evidence. We examine the confidential internal correspondence that the governing body does not want the public to read. We look at what happens inside the legal and service departments when a case becomes a liability. We trace the paper trail of decisions made behind closed doors, decisions that have affected the lives of millions of ordinary people, who were never told the full truth. If you are not subscribed yet, do it right now. Click the subscribe button. Turn on notifications. Episode 2 is coming, and you do not want to miss it. The Warwick Files are open.